What happened to Justin? I don't know. He's developed a drug problem, he has herpes, or he has staph. Shit looks weird as fuck, and he's got like sores on his.
So here's where things get wild. What looked like just another routine training session for Justin Gaethje suddenly became the center of a massive controversy when sharp-eyed fans spotted something alarming in his latest footage. A single screenshot ignited a firestorm of rumors, desperate denials, and behind-the-scenes panic, especially since the UFC already has a dangerous backup plan waiting in the wings if Gaethje can't compete. This is the story of how a potential infection nearly destroyed the lightweight division's biggest fight.
What's going on, guys? What is going on? What is going on? We're still 3 weeks away from the next card. As insane as that is. So, but only 2 weeks away from the next fight week, which is supposed to be UFC 324, Justin Gaethje versus Patrick Pimblett.
January 5th, 2026 started as just another day of preparation for Justin Gaethje, but it quickly spiraled into an absolute nightmare of speculation that put one of the most hyped lightweight title fights in recent memory at serious risk. Dedicated fans who'd been religiously tracking every piece of Gaethje's camp content suddenly zeroed in on something that made their blood run cold. There it was, plain as day, a nasty red swollen bump sitting right there on the side of his neck, sending the entire MMA world into complete meltdown mode.
Looks like Gaethje may have staph. I don't know for sure. I don't know. I don't have the picture right in front of me right now, but the picture looks pretty gruesome. But it could be something where there's like a scab.
Those screenshots didn't just spread, they exploded across every social platform like wildfire through bone-dry timber. Thousands of worried fans became amateur detectives, zooming into every single pixel of that suspicious red mark with the intensity of crime scene investigators hunting for clues. One viral post about the potential championship disaster racked up over 700,000 views, with users going absolutely crazy discussing whether UFC 324's main event was about to implode just 19 days out from fight night.
Just saw the pic of Justin, and dude is growing a second head. Yeah, looks like some of the poisonous mushrooms from The Last of Us, does it not?
Here's what makes staph infections so terrifying for mixed martial artists. These bacterial nightmares caused by Staphylococcus are literally what fighters fear most. Staph thrives in MMA training environments because everything creates the perfect breeding ground. You've got constant skin contact during wrestling, shared mats crawling with bacteria, cuts and scrapes that give infections direct access, and gym hygiene that sometimes leaves a lot to be desired. When staph takes hold, you get those angry red boils and brutal abscesses that can destroy even the toughest fighters. Everyone immediately remembered what happened with Benoit Saint-Denis before his massive showdown against Dustin Poirier. The playbook was eerily identical to what we were seeing now. Saint-Denis flat out denied having any staph infection whatsoever, only to confess after the fight that staph had completely wrecked his performance. The result was absolutely devastating. He looked incredible in round 1, showing his full potential, then completely gassed out in round 2. His body just couldn't maintain the intensity needed to compete at that level while fighting off the infection eating away at his system. The similarities to Gaethje's situation were impossible to miss. Both fighters denied staph infections despite photographic evidence suggesting otherwise, and both situations exploded during those critical final weeks before major fights. The MMA community had been fooled before by fighters who insisted everything was fine, then went out and delivered disappointing performances that left everyone feeling cheated. People weren't buying the reassurances this time around. UFC 34 represented absolutely massive stakes for everyone involved. This card marked the UFC's groundbreaking debut on Paramount Plus under their revolutionary new broadcast agreement, completely reshaping how fight fans would experience the promotion's biggest events. The headliner featured 37-year-old Gaethje, the former interim lightweight champion and BMF title holder famous for his legendary brutal fighting approach, squaring off against 30-year-old Paddy Pimblett, the undefeated rising sensation with enormous fanbase support and serious knockout power. The victor would capture interim lightweight gold while undisputed champion Ilia Topuria remained away handling personal matters. Gaethje brought a devastating 26-5 professional record into this clash, going 9-5 inside the UFC octagon. His entire career had been built on all-out warfare, collecting 20 career knockouts and technical knockouts along the way. His latest outing, a clear unanimous decision win over Rafael Fiziev in their rematch at UFC 313 back in March 2025, proved that even pushing 40, Gaethje remained one of the most lethal strikers in the entire lightweight landscape. Those legendary leg kicks had destroyed multiple elite opponents, including Fiziev and Dustin Poirier, while his relentless pressure style created some of the most unforgettable moments in UFC history. Meanwhile, Pimblett strutted in with an impressive 23-3 professional slate and the flawless 7-0 UFC record. His breakthrough performance came via a dominating third-round TKO destruction of Michael Chandler, completely shutting up critics who questioned whether he could hang with top-tier competition. His approach blended heavy volume striking at 5.19 significant strikes per minute with slick Brazilian jiu-jitsu that had produced 10 career submission wins. The gambling markets made Pimblett the clear favorite at -2110 to -230, suggesting roughly 67 to 70% chances of victory. Gaethje sat as the underdog between +175 and +190, though plenty of smart money and expert analysts saw serious value in the veteran's proven power against elite competition, especially considering his perfect 3-0 record as an underdog of +150 or higher since 2023. At January 24th, 2026 at the legendary T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas would host this spectacle. The main card would kick off at 9 p.m. Eastern, earlier than traditional pay-per-view times as part of the Paramount Plus era changes. Beyond the headliner, the card stacked compelling fights including women's bantamweight champion Kayla Harrison defending against returning legend Amanda Nunes, plus Sean O'Malley facing Song Yadong, Weldo Cortez Acosta battling Derek Lewis, and Arnold Allen taking on Juni Silva. But none of that star power mattered if a staph infection destroyed the main event. The MMA community had witnessed too many instances where compromised fighters delivered performances nowhere near their capabilities. Beyond competitive concerns, real health risks existed about fighters entering the octagon while battling bacterial infections that could spread through blood contact during violent exchanges. Athletic commissions had authority to prevent such scenarios, though their effectiveness depended heavily on honest disclosure from fighters themselves. The timing couldn't have been worse for the UFC's promotional machine. With under 3 weeks until fight night, any main event changes would require scrambling to secure suitable replacements while managing expectations of fans already committed to watching based on the advertised matchup. The promotional engine had been running full throttle, creating content, interviews, and countdown programming all centered around the Gaethje-Pimblett storyline. Those circulating photographs showed what looked like a significant lesion, not minor irritation from shaving mishaps or simple skin problems. Medical professionals commenting on social media noted that the visible characteristics, the redness, swelling, and apparent tenderness, aligned more with bacterial infection than innocent explanations. However, none of these remote assessments could be considered definitive without proper examination, leaving the MMA world speculating based on limited visual evidence, Gaethje's denial, and the looming Zarukian factor. January 6, 2026 brought Justin Gaethje directly to social media platform X to confront the swirling speculation that had dominated MMA discussions for 24 hours. His response carried all the trademark Gaethje aggression and bluntness that fans expected from the fighter known as the Highlight. "Did you screenshot me eating brisket from my YouTube video to make it look like I have herpes on my lip? My neck is a healing ingrown hair," Gaethje posted, adding sarcastically, "It's an ingrown hair on my neck and brisket hanging out of my mouth in Nostradamus." This response was pure Gaethje, confrontational, dismissive, and dripping with contempt that suggested he viewed the speculation as ridiculous. He insisted the suspicious neck mark was simply a healing ingrown hair, an explanation some found reasonable while others remained deeply skeptical. Social media comment sections revealed a fan base split down the middle. Many pointed out that Gaethje's denial followed the exact pattern as Benoit Saint-Denis, who similarly dismissed health concerns before ultimately admitting the truth after his performance suffered. The precedent of fighters denying staph infections only to have denials proven false made observers reluctant to simply accept Gaethje's word. Any replacement talk immediately brought one name to everyone's lips: Arman Dasharukian, the #1 ranked lightweight contender, had been controversially passed over for this interim title shot, with the UFC choosing the more marketable Gaethje-Pimblett pairing instead. This decision generated massive backlash among hardcore fans and analysts who viewed Dasharukian as the obvious choice based purely on merit. Tsarukyan had publicly stated his willingness to serve as backup should either fighter become unavailable. This perfectly matched his character, a fighter who repeatedly demonstrated readiness to accept any challenge anytime. His position as unofficial UFC 3034 backup meant he was maintaining peak training intensity and could step in on relatively short notice. The 29-year-old Armenian entered this scenario with a stellar 23-3 professional record and roughly 10-2 UFC slate. His latest victory, a dominant arm triangle submission of Dan Hooker in November 2025 at UFC Qatar, only strengthened his case as the most deserving title challenger. His style combined elite wrestling with rapidly improving striking, creating a complete mixed martial arts package many believed superior to anyone else at lightweight. Tsarukyan had openly dismissed both Gaethje and Pimblett, publicly calling them punching bags and declaring neither is on my level. While trash talk was common in MMA, Tsarukyan's confidence stemmed from genuine technical superiority most analysts acknowledged. His wrestling would theoretically neutralize Gaethje's dangerous striking, while his ground control would dominate Pimblett despite the Englishman's submission threats. Lightweight division dynamics created fascinating backdrop to this potential replacement scenario. Pimblett had previously expressed preference for fighting Gaethje over Tsarukyan, stating no one cares about him regarding the Armenian challenger. This preference made stylistic sense. Gaethje's stand-up style would let Pimblett showcase his own striking, while Tsarukyan's suffocating wrestling presented a much more problematic puzzle. The UFC's reluctance to insert Tsarukyan into this matchup was widely attributed to concerns about protecting their investment in Pimblett. The promotion had clearly been grooming the Liverpool native for a potential super fight against Ilia Topuria, a bout that would generate enormous pay-per-view numbers in Europe and beyond. Allowing Tsarukyan to derail those plans with dominant grappling would represent a significant setback for promotional narratives the UFC had carefully constructed. Hypothetical matchups between these three fighters revealed why the UFC might prefer certain combinations. A Tsarukyan-Gaethje fight would heavily favor the Armenian, his wrestling expected to neutralize Gaethje's striking and grind out a decision. Tsarukyan versus Pimblett would be even more one-sided, with Tsarukyan projected to dominate on the ground where Pimblett's jiu-jitsu would be overwhelmed by superior wrestling positioning. The Gaethje-Pimblett fight, while competitive, offered the most unpredictable option and highest likelihood of producing an exciting firefight. Other replacement options circulated through MMA media. Some suggested Max Holloway, the legendary featherweight turned lightweight who previously knocked out Gaethje spectacularly at UFC 300. Others mentioned Charles Oliveira, former lightweight champion who remained one of the sport's most dangerous submission threats. A potential Pimblett-Chandler rematch was discussed, given Chandler's previous loss to Pimblett and theoretical willingness to accept short-notice redemption opportunity. The fight community's reaction to Gaethje's denial was mixed at best. Many observers noted the photographs seemed to show something more substantial than simple ingrown hair, with the red swollen appearance more consistent with bacterial infection than minor irritation typically associated with ingrown facial hair. The fact that Gaethje addressed speculation so quickly suggested rumors had gained enough traction to demand response, which some interpreted as evidence the concerns had merit. Historical patterns of fighter denials, followed by eventual admissions, created skepticism atmospheres that straightforward explanations couldn't easily dispel. Combat sports athletes had long demonstrated willingness to compete through injuries and illnesses that would sideline athletes in other sports, making their public health statements inherently suspect for those understanding the toughness culture pervading the industry. The UFC's communication strategy in such situations typically involved minimal public acknowledgement until circumstances forced their hand. Dana White and company preferred controlling narratives rather than responding to speculation, meaning official statements about potential fight changes would likely come only when changes became absolutely necessary. This approach, while understandable from business perspectives, left fans and media filling information vacuums with increasingly elaborate theories. Contrast between UFC public silence and social media commentary explosion created surreal atmosphere, where official channels provided no guidance while unofficial sources debated every pixel of controversial photographs. Fight fans found themselves torn between wanting their anticipated main event to proceed as scheduled and recognizing patterns that historically preceded last-minute changes. The ramifications extended far beyond a single fight card, touching fundamental questions about fighter health transparency, promotional matchmaking priorities, and lightweight division's future direction. Whether Gaethje's denial proved accurate or the situation evolved into last-minute replacement scenario, conversations sparked by this incident would have lasting implications for how the sport handles similar circumstances moving forward. The lightweight division stood at crossroads that would define competitive martial arts for years ahead. Champion Ilia Topuria's absence due to personal reasons had already created uncertainty about when proper title defense might occur. Creating an interim championship represented the UFC's attempt to maintain divisional momentum while their champion remained inactive, though challenger choices for that interim belt had generated controversy even before Staph infection speculation added another chaos layer. Tsarukyan represented everything hardcore MMA fans valued: technical excellence, constant improvement, aggressive fighting style, and willingness to face anyone anytime. His December 2023 knockout of Beneil Dariush in just 64 seconds at UFC Austin demonstrated devastating power complementing his wrestling dominance. His November 2025 submission of Dan Hooker showed his grappling continued evolving, adding arm triangle chokes to already comprehensive submission arsenal. Tension between Tsarukyan's technical brilliance and the UFC's apparent preference for more marketable matchups crystallized a tension that had long simmered beneath professional MMA's surface. The promotion operated as business first and sporting organization second, meaning fighter merit was only one factor among many when determining title opportunity recipients. Pimblett's massive following, particularly in the United Kingdom, made him attractive promotional vehicle regardless of whether he technically earned his title shot through cage performance. Gaethje's career trajectory added another dimension to this analysis. At 37, the highlight operated in his fighting career's twilight. His style absorbing significant damage while outputting devastating offense had accumulated considerable wear on his body and brain over years of professional competition. Victory over Fiziev demonstrated Gaethje could still compete at the highest level, but questions about how many more wars his body could sustain remained open and concerning. Tail of the tape for this potential matchup revealed important stylistic considerations. Gaethje stood 5'11" with 70-inch reach, while Pimblett measured 5'0" with slightly longer 73-inch reach advantage. Gaethje's significant strike output of approximately 6 p9 lane per minute with 58 to 60% accuracy exceeded Pimblett's 5.9 per minute, though Gaethje's striking defense at roughly 51% was worse than typically considered elite level. His takedown defense registered approximately 70%, suggesting he could potentially keep fights standing where his power advantage would be most pronounced. Stylistic keys for each fighter were clearly defined. For Gaethje, victory depended on chopping Pimblett's legs early to sap mobility, forcing close-range exchanges where his power would overwhelm, and stuffing takedown attempts while countering with uppercuts and knees. His legendary leg kicks had crippled multiple elite opponents throughout his career, and implementing that game plan against Pimblett represented his clearest victory path. For Pimblett, the path forward involved using reach and volume to outpace the older fighter, mixing takedowns to force energy expenditure, and capitalizing on scrambles for back takes or submissions as fights progressed into championship rounds. His youth, cardio, and grappling threats could become decisive factors if fights extended into rounds 4 and 5, where Gaethje's accumulated damage and age might manifest as slowing reflexes and diminished output. Broader implications for the lightweight division remain significant regardless of whether this particular fight occurred as scheduled. Winners would position themselves for unification bouts against Topuria later in 2026, assuming the champion returned from personal absence within reasonable timeframes. Tsarukyan, whether entering UFC 34 as replacement or continuing to wait in wings, would eventually receive his title opportunity. The question was simply whether that opportunity would come sooner or later. The UFC's Paramount Plus debut represented a turning point for the promotion's business model, transitioning away from traditional pay-per-view towards subscription streaming for certain major events. UFC 34's success would influence how the promotion approached similar cards in the future, making main event stability critically important from both sporting and commercial perspectives. As Fight Week approached, the MMA world remained fixated on Gaethje's neck, analyzing every subsequent training post and public appearance for signs the situation might be more serious than acknowledged. Whether healing ingrown hair explanations satisfied skeptics or additional evidence emerged supporting staph infection theories, one reality remained unchanged. The lightweight division sat poised on potential chaos edge, with Arman Tyrjian standing ready to capitalize should opportunity present itself. The collision course between Gaethje and Pimblett, or potentially Tsarukyan and Pimblett, promised violence, drama, and crowning of an interim lightweight champion who would carry the division forward while its undisputed champion remained absent. Whether infection, ingrown hair, or something else entirely determined final matchups, one certainty persisted: the lightweight division would deliver moments justifying its reputation as mixed martial arts' most competitive weight class. Financial implications of any main event changes would ripple through the entire promotional ecosystem. Paramount Plus had invested heavily in acquiring UFC content, and the debut major event on their platform represented crucial tests of whether combat sports could drive subscription growth in increasingly competitive streaming landscapes. Weakened main events, whether through fighter withdrawal or compromised performance due to hidden illness, could undermine entire strategic rationales behind broadcasting partnerships. Broader questions raised by situations touched upon systemic issues within combat sports extending far beyond individual fights. Fighter health transparency remained unsolved challenges, with competitors facing strong incentives to conceal injuries and illnesses that might cost opportunities they'd spent months training to secure. Athletic commission systems provided theoretical oversight, but often proved incapable of detecting issues fighters were determined to hide. Legacy implications for whichever fighter emerged victorious would echo through lightweight division history. Interim championships, while technically secondary to undisputed titles, carried significant prestige and positioned holders as de facto division faces during periods of champion inactivity. Gaethje had previously held interim gold, defeating Tony Ferguson in one of the most violent championship fights in UFC history. Pimblett sought to add championship credentials to careers that, while successful, hadn't yet reached the sport's pinnacle. Or Tsarukyan. Any path to the octagon at UFC 34, whether through gate withdrawal or other circumstances, represented vindication for fighters who had been systematically bypassed despite doing everything asked inside cages. His patience and professionalism facing promotional decisions that seemed to prioritize entertainment over merit had earned respect among hardcore fans and fellow fighters alike. The lightweight division had never been more volatile, and chaos surrounding UFC 324 perfectly encapsulated why this weight class continued captivating combat sports fans globally. What began as eagle-eyed observers scrutinizing screenshots from YouTube training vlogs escalated into full examinations of fighter health transparency, promotional matchmaking philosophy, and the precarious nature of building major events around athletes pushing their bodies to absolute breaking points. Justin Gaethje maintains his neck, shows nothing more than healing ingrown hair, dismissing speculation with characteristic aggression, and calling out amateur investigators who transformed brisket-eating moments into disease evidence. But Benoit Saint Denis's shadow looms large over these denials. A fighter who followed exact dismissal playbooks before eventually admitting Staph had compromised his performance when it mattered most. The MMA community has been burned before, and their skepticism reflects hard-learned lessons rather than baseless paranoia. Arman Tsarukyan remains the elephant in every room where this fight gets discussed. The #1 ranked contender, passed over for marketability reasons, stands ready to capitalize on any opportunity. His training camp maintained championship intensity precisely because circumstances in this sport change with brutal unpredictability. Whether he enters UFC 32-24 as last-minute replacement or continues frustrating waits for what everyone acknowledges he deserves, Tsarukyan represents meritocratic ideals that promotional realities often sacrifice at entertainment value altars. The UFC's Paramount Plus debut hangs in balance. A multi-million-dollar broadcasting experiment depending on delivering spectacle subscribers expect. Paddy Pimblett needs dance partners who will stand and trade with him, feeding narratives of rising stars conquering established veteran. Gaethje provides that matchup perfectly while Tsarukyan does not. He provides wrestle clinics that end promotional dreams. As January 24th approaches, every training post from Gaethje's camp will be analyzed with forensic intensity. Every photograph will be zoomed, enhanced, and debated across social media platforms. Hungry for indications the main event might shift, the lightweight division remains mixed martial arts' most unpredictable weight class, and this situation exemplifies exactly why that reputation persists. Whether Gaethje's neck heals without incident or Tsarukyan receives calls he's been waiting for, one truth remains absolute. Somebody gets crowned interim lightweight champion at T-Mobile Arena, and violence required to claim that belt will be spectacular regardless of who stands across from Paddy Pimblett. The only question left is who survives fight week healthy enough to compete, and in this sport, that question never gets answered until cage doors close.